Welcome to Evolution on the Mic. I am your host, Ariana de la Cruz.
And I'm your co-host, Antoine Dove.
And we are back, season 8, Faith in Others, episode 5, Healing Family Bonds, One Step at a Time. In our last episode, we talked about how God often uses people to answer our prayers and how sometimes we knowingly reject those blessings. We explored how to become more spiritually aware, open-hearted, and willing to receive even when the answer doesn't look the way we imagined. Highly recommend that you guys go back and watch that episode if you didn't already. I am sure that God is going to give you everything that you need and impact you in the way that He can if you watch that episode. On today's episode, we're talking about family, the place that can be our greatest source of love, but also can be our deepest source of hurt. The good news is that God's heart is always for restoration. We're going to explore what it means to heal family bonds, rebuild trust, and invite God into those broken places. Because true healing doesn't usually happen all at once. It unfolds through prayer, forgiveness, and the small steps of faith we choose along the way. But before we get into all this juicy stuff that we're going to be talking about today, I want to check in with you, Antoine. How's everything going?
Life's good, Ari. Life's good. Yeah, things good. No complaints here. We are getting into our groove with school. There was something I noticed this week though. So my daughter I mentioned earlier, she's in dance. And I was talking with one of the parents at the dance thing that we were at about how we'd look through this. They had this like little glass where you can watch the kids dancing, and you see all these girls and some little boys in there too who are dancing, and they're just like giving it their all. Like there's, you would think that they were freaking like I don't know, like one of the best dancers in the world, and it kind of struck something with me about like how important it is like for activities like that where it's like dance is something that is so unique to you and you can be yourself and they weren't feeling judged, and it really made my heart feel very warm about her
Mm,
being in something like that because you know you worry about with kids like my daughter's she's I mean she has my genes, that's all I can say. And so like you know when it comes to school and things like that, kids sometimes can be rude and be mean, and it you know it hurts their self-esteem, and it's nice when you can have outlets where they can be themselves and not be judged. And I felt like that dance class really is providing that for kids. So I don't know, it was just one of those moments where you there's a sense of gratitude of being able to have things like that that gives children the space to be who they are and not feel like they're being judged by anyone else for it.
mm, awesome. Sounds
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, so
You
I know that
know,
was probably deep for like a check-in, but something I was feeling in my heart
we
in that
love
moment.
yeah, no, we definitely love the deep check-ins, people like connecting with us and have us be relatable because that's what we're about, you
Yeah,
know.
for sure, for sure. But what about you? How's things going? What's life like down in Costa Rica? Pura
Man,
vida.
life is definitely more pura vida than anything else.
I
You know what I
love it.
mean? I'm definitely learning strategies to reduce stress and just be more mindful and be in the moment and be present and be still because anxiety is real, you know what I mean? And I
Mm,
have suffered from a lot of anxiety and panic attacks. So I definitely feel like being here, I am being um getting trained to be more mindful, be more still, take
mm,
care of myself and just have more peace overall and not rush in anything because the people here, they're not in a rush to do anything.
hmm.
Everybody's here pretty chill, slow paced, and they really do live out that pura vida saying. And I feel like some of it, not entirely, but some of it little by little is 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 inspiring me to come into that for myself. It's
Mm.
definitely needed, because again, I suffer from anxiety, but I'm glad that I'm here and I'm glad that I am making changes and seeing those shifts in my life.
Yeah,
So
beautiful.
overall, it's great here. I love my view, of the ocean. You know, um, so yeah, no, I'm definitely loving it here. Prince is good too, thank God.
Prince. How
And
is
yeah,
Prince?
he's old. He's
Prince.
going. Prince is turning 12 October
What?
1st.
Wow.
Yeah,
That
12.
is
I've had my little dog since he was 2 months old.
Wow.
So I am definitely grateful for him. He's my everything. I love him so much. I definitely feel like God brought me him, as silly as that
Mhm.
sounds. But when you have that connection with something, whether it's a person or an animal that like, you
Mhm.
look at them and the way they are with you, I feel like I look at him and I know exactly what he needs. It's just something supernatural, the relationship that I have with my dogs. And I don't
I
ever
love it.
want him to go. So
No.
yeah, and he definitely helps me too with my stress. He's like my emotional support for sure, for sure. So I'm grateful for him. God definitely brought me Prince at a good time in my life, in a time where I came to Florida and I was like, spent a lot of time alone, and I never, really was alone because Prince has been there the whole time I left, pretty much the whole time I left my mom's house when I left
Wow.
New York. My early 20s. But anywho, thank God I'm good. And look, this is so crazy. I couldn't even make this up. Once he hears his name whenever I'm
Look
on the
at him.
phone, like whenever he hears his name, he comes to me. Hi, Poppy. You
Look at
love
that.
mommy. I love you too. Mwah. I know, Poppy, but mommy's working right now. Yeah, he just likes to be on my lap. Oh my
I
God, it's so
love it.
funny.
I love it.
Yeah, he's definitely been an aid in a lot of my healing,
Yeah.
which we're talking about today. We're talking about healing family bonds.
Mm,
And it is exactly what the title says, like one step at a time.
mm,
I don't know if there's anybody watching that has felt hurt and
mm,
pain and strife from someone in their family, or maybe a group of people in their family, or maybe their entire family, right? Maybe you've gone astray and you've felt disconnected from your family, or you've had traumas with a family member, or you had maybe a great relationship with a sibling, and then that kind of maybe separated after some point, and you're probably like, damn, like, how do I heal? How can I how can I allow God to use his power to help heal our relationships in family, because family can, like, especially for our parents, if you're a parent, or if you're someone and your parents are still here with you, they can bring you the greatest source of joy. They can be, right?
mm,
They're the one that birthed you into this world, right? That's your first source of connection, is your parents. Without them, you would not be here, literally,
mhm,
So it can be the greatest gift, but it can also bring the greatest pain, because your expectation of them, because they're your blood, is so high that when they don't do the things that maybe you feel like you deserve or that you expect, it's it can leave you with a big pain and a big scar and a big, something traumatic to get over. And I just want to tell you guys that that's perfectly normal. You know what I mean? If you were in a situation right now where you're feeling pain, unspeakable pain in a family situation, like, you're not alone. I know that it's a burden to carry, when you've been hurt by someone, and someone that you've trusted, or you feel like they should have done this and they didn't do that, and it left you feeling unworthy or abandoned, or like you can't trust anymore. These are things that God can and will mend. He can heal that. And I want to just kind of teach today on that, and just really convey that healing is a process, right? Healing doesn't happen in an instant. It's not something like, oh, I'm aware that that happened and I'm just going to let it go and I'm healed automatically. It doesn't work like that. And it's something that happens step by step in its time. Another thing that I want to teach today is that broken trust and wounds in the family, that it can feel permanent, like legit 100%. It can feel like something that has traumatized you, and you're just gonna never get over it, and it feels like you're never gonna be able to shake that pain off. You're never gonna be able to forgive that person. Like, it does feel like that, because it's like, yo, you broke my trust, like you hurt me. I'm never gonna be able to let this go. That feeling of that permanency, that's a normal part of the process. But with God, healing is possible. And that's what I want to convey here today. And there's steps, right? I will say there's 3 steps that we need to go through to kind of get ourselves in this healing process going, right? And I'm going to name each three, and then I'm going to kind of go into it a bit on each. And the first one is forgiveness. The second one is boundaries. And the third one is having faith in God's timing. When we're talking about forgiveness, we really can't reconcile anything until we've been able to forgive.
Mm.
And forgiveness is your choice to release the anger, the bitterness, and the resentment you've been holding on to. So it's a choice. It's not something that you're just going to wake up one day and say, today I'm going to forgive them, and not have any reasons in your mind. Like it's a very conscious decision that you are making, because you don't want to hold on to that pain. You no longer want to hold to that anger, and you want to be freed from it, right? So it starts with that understanding. That's the foundation. But understand that forgiveness doesn't mean instant trust. Like you're just going to forgive them and everything is good, It's going to take time to rebuild the relationship slowly through time and their actions, right? And consistency on their end, right? And forgiveness is about letting go of the weight that has been on your heart, so it no longer controls you. It's saying, I'm not carrying this person's poison anymore. God, I release it to you. And I think that's beautiful, because if somebody hurt you, hurt others. Like when you're hurt, and like they say, misery loves company. When a person hurts you, that's typically a indication of their own pain. And we carry that pain like if it's ours, like if it's our fault, especially if it's something that you went through when you were like very young, and you're thinking, oh, it's because of me, because I'm no good, because of, of whatever negative thing you're thinking of yourself. In reality, that person hurt you because of their own pain. So you choosing to release it, you are releasing yourself from that poison that they put on you, but it's theirs to begin with. You're just carrying it for them. And you got to say, I no longer want to carry this pain for you. You caused it to me, but I'm going to choose to forgive you. But I know that God is going to be the center point of this, because only He can help heal me, and only He can help heal you as well from your own poison. Does that make sense? And then the next one is setting boundaries. So like once you've already forgiven that person and you're giving them a second chance, right? It's okay and good to have boundaries, right? It doesn't mean you're just going to ignore the signs and of your wisdom, and you're going to ignore your own safety. No, boundaries are protection, not punishment. You can forgive someone and work toward healing, but that doesn't mean that you give them unlimited access to hurt you again. So you got to be mindful here. You got to take it one day at a time, one step at a time, setting that boundary, allowing them in your space, but not too much, gauging to see, are they working on themselves? Will they do that to me again? So you're just setting the boundaries. You forgave them. You've let it go. You're not carrying the pain for them, but you're also not just going to embrace them in 100%, right? You got to give some room there for that person to, deal and heal for themselves, so that, things don't repeat again. So you don't want to give them unlimited access. Safety comes first, right? God calls us to love, forgive, and seek restoration, but He never calls us to put ourselves in dangerous, abusive, or toxic situations. And sometimes with our family members and people that we love, if they're not on a path of self-healing, if they're not on a path of betterment and God and seeking, what's going to happen is that you wanting to be a good person and wanting to help them, they're just going to be biting at you. They're going to be, having their poison, affect you and infiltrate you, So we have to be mindful of that. Like, hey, I forgive you, but I'm setting a boundary, because yes, God called me to love and forgive and to seek this restoration, but it's not for me to just be available to you 24/7 either, because this is something that is, dangerous for me, or it's kind of toxic for me. So it's also realizing those things too, and ultimately it's having faith in God's timing. We cannot force the process, and we cannot force people to change. Healing takes time. Broken trust or wounded family relationships don't get fixed overnight. Remember that. It doesn't. We may want instant change, but God usually works step by step. And we know this, So don't force it. right? Don't force a conversation. Don't demand quick forgiveness back from the other person, right? Or expect them to act healed right away, because they're not going to get healed right away, especially if you're being the person that is taking the high road and is working on yourself, right? You no longer want to carry that burden. You cannot force that person to see what things the way you see them, because you're ready. They might not be ready, but you at least started the path to open up the space for them to start seeing themselves, because they're like, wow, this person is being different. They're forgiving me. They're being loving towards me. Why did I do that to them? Man, I really got to get help for myself. And then that person, especially if God is in the midst, they're going to start seeing themselves and wanting to start helping themselves and start treating you differently and having more respect for you and talking to you with love, So just don't force it and don't expect them to change right away, because most likely than not, it's at their time, it's going to be at God's pace. And I want you to trust God's pace, right? Faith means believing that God is working even when you can't see progress. So even if you've been, trying to heal a bond with a family member and it's been years, don't get discouraged. God is working in that person, and God has his process for that person separately from you. So just trust his pace and trust what he's doing, even if you can't see it, God is doing something, right? Because maybe the other person just isn't ready. They aren't ready for the change. They aren't ready to receive it. And that's perfectly fine, but God knows the right moment for hearts to get softened and for restoration to begin for that other person. You stick to your path, you stick to what you're doing, and continue to heal and continue to let go. And you'll see what God does in that person's life without you even knowing. God is working in that person because you've opened that door energetically and spiritually to start mending the generational bondages between family members. And you can be that light, and you can start that shift, and you can be that love that creates something new in that family relationship, And I want to talk about, my own story, something that I went through, because I really believe that it can tie well with, what I'm teaching today. From a very young age, I've always loved my dad, my father. I always loved him to death. I wasn't raised with him. My mom and my dad divorced when I was just 1 year old, maybe like 9 months. My mom left and lived with my godmother, with her sister. And I was raised there with my godmother for the most part, with my mom and my godmother, my brother. And my mom will allow me and my brother to go stay with my dad, my grandmother, my aunt, for like Christmas breaks, Christmas, summer, things like that. And whenever I will go visit my dad, I remember from a very young age, I would always want to sit on his lap, rub on his bald head, and seek his attention, be around him. That was just me. And my dad was not an affectionate person. He was not a person of words, a person of affection. He would not be looking for me if I wasn't looking for him. And I just remember always wanting him, but he was just cold and distant. And he would either be working a lot or he would be in his room. And rarely would he be in the living room watching TV. But those few times where that 1 hour that he'll be watching TV, I would put myself on his lap, whether he wanted me to or not. And as I got older, I noticed that there was a yearning there. There was a pain there, not having my dad, always wanting my dad. And when I was 9 years old, I remember I was like, where's dad? Like, he's off for work. Where is he? And my grandma was like, oh, he's in the room. Just knock on the door. He'll let you in. So I knocked on the door. I was 9 years old. And I laid on the bed. My dad looked at me with a tear coming down his eye. He's like, I'm going to tell you something, but I'm only going to tell you this once, because I don't believe that I have to tell anybody this more than once.